All right, so hi, now that we've got that sorted out, welcome everyone to episode 2 of the Full Circle Podcast, quick show where we take a quick look around the world of OSU, tournaments, mapping, and so on, and how we see it. I'm this one guy. Joining me are Chillier and Dio today for our little intro here. It's been a fun summer of tournaments, and as summer moves into fall, we're going to take a quick look back. I got to recap this whole thing that I already said once.
We're going to make the same jokes again also.
We're going to take a quick look back at the tournaments that were. And yeah, so we've got Chillier and Dio, and we're going to ask real quick what, just so they can get this joke for everybody in chat, what, Chillier, your favorite moment was of the summer that is just leaving us in the tournament scene.
Oh, my favorite moment from this summer's tournaments was when Karcher said it's Karchin time and absolutely karched over all the other teams this year.
My favorite moment was when Malashevsky said it's chefin' time and chefed all over everybody in Corsace Grand Finals.
All right, and I refuse to join this crowd. I did it once, and nobody got to hear it. I am not doing it again. This is not happening. We're not going through this all twice.
Oh my god.
I did enjoy seeing some players putting on some pop-off performances. So on today's episode, we're going to talk about a couple of tournaments that just ended. So we've got, of course, Corsace Open. If you didn't get a chance to watch the preview and then the grand finals from last week, those can be found on the Corsace YouTube for the VODs. We're going to briefly touch on NAT, which is one of the big 1v1 tournaments of the year, North America tournament. And USA States Cup, USC, just ended as well last weekend and had a pretty exciting finale. And then we go on from there to a little preview of some upcoming events. We've got C3, the Circuit Championship, beginning this week, the brainchild of Dio. And then, because everybody, I'm sure, is very interested, we have a bit of a discussion on the Corsace Open 2023, all the format changes that we're going to be seeing next year. So we will get to all those over the course of today's episode. So, without further ado, we're going to bring in Mr. iFlame, and we're going to discuss Corsace Open, because it is, of course, the Corsace tournament. It is the biggest 4v4 of the year, and it had an incredibly exciting Grand Finals week. So hopefully we can get over to our scene. We can bring in Mr. iFlame, and we can get that to talk about that Grand Finals week, which was a pretty incredible one. So welcome, Mr. iFlame, to the chat. Of course, top 3 teams in that we had Goofy, which is now the worst team name in the history of OSU, and we had Whispering Almond. So I believe we should be able to get their rosters up on screen now. First up, of course, we had the losers final, and I know everybody got to watch that, and we saw Team Goofy versus Team The. I just want to get your guys' thoughts, because that was, I think, went exactly how we expected to, which is kind of a rarity. So we talked about last week. We kind of all favored Goofy in that one by a pretty big margin, and that's basically what we got. So let's go around the horn here and see what people thought of that first match of the week. Let's start below with iFlame there.
Yeah, like you said, it was pretty much exactly how we expected it. I don't think anybody predicted the win for the. They won their 2 GT maps, again, like everybody expected. But beyond that, they were kind of just outmatched by Goofy. They lost on everything else, just worst team performances, could not put up as good of scores, and they're just really outmatched, honestly.
Yeah, I think even for them to be outmatched, even on maps like Nomad 6, kind of really shows just how well the later stages went for Goofy last weekend, because I think a lot of people probably would have expected still Ikoro to be top scoring that map and still to be putting up ridiculous scores, but Kriller showed up and krilled all over everybody, so get to make that joke a third time.
Oh god!
Did that in losers finals and in grand finals, which we'll get to. But yeah, he had a pretty good weekend, and the rest of Goofy still had also very good scores, both on Nomad 6, but on a lot of the other maps as well. And I think that played a lot into why it was 7-2 rather than 7-3, 4, or 5, because Goofy was playing very, very well last weekend.
Yeah, they had that outstanding team performance that we kind of talked about that they really needed to have this weekend. And, while it did show in the grand finals match as well, it absolutely showed in this match versus and I think this was kind of the beginnings of their absolutely dominant weekend that they had here. Of course, Kriller with his standout performances across multiple maps and all the teammates backing him up this year. There was just kind of the perfect storm for them the past weekend.
Yeah, I think, man, Kriller is such a ridiculous story of improvement over the past couple of years, because you look at that team, and obviously the two names that probably jump out are going to be Whitecat and Emrek, right? But Kriller came in, played most of the maps in all of the matches they played, and he got a bunch of top scores. That guy has been just low key such a big carry for every team that he's been on, and it makes Germany scary in OWC coming up, but that'll be a topic for another day. But yeah, I mean, it definitely felt like the losers final was just kind of, it was like we said, it was just what you expected. They didn't really have it for that match against just a really strong Goofy team, and I guess that was kind of expected, unfortunately, but it was impressive to see them get the top 3 anyway. They were the number 3 seed number 4 seed in qualifier. Somebody can correct me on that.
Yeah, number 4.
But got top 3 in. I don't know if it was necessarily expected. I would like to be. I would be interested to hear what you guys think of their team getting top 3, and kind of what that says for the players on that team going forward as big, strong tournament performance players.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this roster, and this is the team that you would expect to do well. These are all very, very strong, very capable tournament players. Obviously, you have Arnold, Intercambing, Okoro, and Rupertian, just to name a couple. And when you look at the rest of the teams, it honestly doesn't feel like there's a ton of good rosters that can match up the 3 seed Shale. I mean, when you just compare the rosters between these two teams, you do have some strong players on that team as well. But on paper, it feels like the should just be the stronger team without too much contest. And so the qualifying 4th seed does feel like a little bit of a blip on the radar there, but I think overall they placed pretty much as you'd expect.
I think one thing to talk about with that as well, talking about kind of the tiers of different teams that you had in Corsace this year, is that a lot of the really big tournament players just weren't here, right? Bubbleman is gone, Flying Tuna is gone, so you have a lot less sort of S-tier talent playing for some of the best teams. And so for there to still be 3 teams that are relatively evenly matched becomes a much bigger ask of a slightly smaller pool of high-level tournament players.
I don't really think you could have said it any better. I think that's kind of the, how this really does boil down to, Dio, is the fact that you are missing, a little bit of that top tier tournament scene. And while there are still enough to form those 2 to 3 teams, it really was kind of concentrated in teams like Goofy and Whispering Almond, where you're looking at these rosters of 6, 7, 8 players who are all at the same skill level. They're at the top of their game. They can perform well across whatever picks that they need to, and they give that roster the depth that you're looking for. And the only difference with Team The, and I think why they got 3rd this year, is because while they have a lot of that top range tournament talent, it's only really maybe the top 3 or 4 players on the team rather than the top 50-60% of the players on this roster. So you do start to lose a bit of that depth. You lose the possible picks you have in these later stages. Banning against this team is maybe a little bit more straightforward for those top 2 teams, and that's really kind of the difference between that 2nd and 1st place spot and that 3rd place spot, even though it is so close.
And that's something I kind of will want to return to a little bit later on when we talk about the future kind of changes in 2023, because like you said, there's, with the players kind of missing some of those big names, Bowman, even Okanamo Dust Ice, Vaxay to a lesser extent not being present, it shrinks the talent pool a little bit. And when you have a couple of these giant super teams, it does really kind of compress it into those top few teams. And I think that's something that going forward into the future we're going to be adjusting a little bit kind of based on, but that actually kind of makes it even more impressive when you look at a team like Team The, where you have a couple people who who have a little more limited contributions to their team. It makes it, I think, even more impressive against rosters like the ones that they were playing against in this tournament, that they were able to come in top 3. But that, I think, is a little bit of the impetus for some of the changes to later on. So definitely, I think, will be something to take into consideration going forward. And then, of course, grand finals, right? So Goofy wins in kind of expected fashion, goes on to grand finals against team Whispering Almond, who I would say have kind of looked unbeatable. Like, when was the last time that that roster or that sort of group of players mostly together has lost a tournament? And we all picked last week when we did the predictions, like we had 3 of the 4 of us picking Whispering Almond to win that. So you go into this match, and we talked to Fiery from Goofy about just kind of wanting to go with the flow with picks and bans, because they're kind of finally getting MREC back. They're feeling like this is more competitive than I think some of us did. So what do you think, just as a general kind of reaction to Goofy coming out, winning the first set 7-5, and then making it so close all the way through that entire match to force, the tiebreaker and win it? Like, what's the immediate impression that people get? I think let's go just left to right here, starting at Chillier, with that match result.
I think we were all looking for kind of the continued performance from this roster on Whispering Almond that we've seen so much in the past. And I think a very important part of kind of what we were discussing in the kind of pre-talks before this weekend was the difference that somebody like MREC was going to make for Goofy, kind of being able to come through for these matches, be able to perform well for them, and missing MREC in the previous week and then going into this weekend and having him be kind of one of those top 2 to 3, even top scoring a lot of these, faster DT maps, really did make a difference for them, especially stuff like, if you watch the first set between the two teams, his FC on Crazy Hot, the only one in the lobby, won them the map by over 250,000 points. You've got a step up performances from Kriller for the entire match. You had players like Henry who had, their star performances for a few of them. Of course, you can't forget Zudinator and White Cat also with a couple of top scores on there. So there really is just this overwhelming team balance that they had, that they really pushed through a lot of these picks. And, again, of course, alongside the kind of confident return of MREC, really giving them that top level performance and speed that they kind of needed from the week before.
And I want to talk briefly, because I agree the return of MREC is a big deal, and the way that the team kind of developed into grand finals is a big deal. I want to talk briefly about just how much of a big deal it probably is for some of the players on the side of Goofy to actually get that win, because I think it's something that's gone maybe a bit under discussed. White Cat got his tournament unbanned for OWC 2020, right? That was the first tournament he played after getting initially unbanned. And then there's been this sort of rivalry between the cores of these two teams over the last 2 years or so, starting in perennial 2021, where White Cat, Zudi, MREC, Fiery were all on a team that I believe exited in 4th place, and we saw the Nation filled with a bunch of the similar players get 2nd in that tournament. And then Corsace last year, you have a similar situation going on where both of these teams, I believe, end up in very high placements. I don't remember the exact placements for both of them, but you have, again, Whispering Almond actually winning. No, it was, again, 1st and 2nd for both of these teams. Whispering Almond winning last year, and which was the team name they went with last year for Goofy, getting 2nd. The same thing happening in perennial 2022, where Whispering Almond, under the moniker of Microwave Lobster, but with a lot of the same exact players, right, getting 1st, and Goofy under the moniker of Very Cool, again with a bunch of the same players, getting 2nd. So to be beaten out basically 3 times in a row by almost the same core of players, then finally getting the win here in Corsace, I think is a very big deal for them. And I think the confidence boost after that is going to be very big for a lot of their players as well.
Yeah, and I think you guys summed it up pretty well. I mean, I don't think anybody really expected Goofy to be able to win that one. But I do want to highlight is the start of that first match. Whispering Almond did have a little bit of a mispick, gave up an early break point, and we saw Goofy go up 3-0. And so I feel like that is what gave them the momentum to actually pull through that first match and be able to go to the bracket reset, because I feel like if the match ends up even at that point and they do not give up that break point, we potentially see a tiebreaker in the first match, and it probably goes to Whispering Almond at that point, and we just see a very different outcome. But like you said, I think MREC was kind of the big X factor in that match. They'd have a very close winners bracket finals, only losing by 2 points, I think. I want to say 7-5. And that was without MREC. So MREC comes in, big addition, top scored lots of maps, was in for almost every pick, and really put up a good performance for them. But on top of that, when we talk about this team losing to Whispering Almond in so many previous tournaments, I do feel like kind of you have obviously Whitecat, Emrek, Zudi, you expect to put up good performances, but there's also Kriller and Kieg who really showed up in this tournament, put up good supporting scores, got some top scores even. Kriller with the massive performance on that tiebreaker in the second match, and it was just an incredible team performance out of them. Everybody stepped up when it matters, and it was enough.
And I think that's such like an important factor, because in these big 4v4s, you can't just rely on one person in this sort of setting. When the teams are as closely matched as these teams were, you do have to get great scores out of everyone. And, you know, it's really easy to just say, oh, you know, Emrek played 11 maps, he top scored 5 of them, and he had the top match costs in the bracket reset, or something like that. But you look at like the scores that other people are putting up, like you said, like Keeg put up, Whitecat put up, Kriller. And I think it's a really good thing, I think, to see kind of going forward in tournaments in general, is teams being able to put together rosters where everybody contributes in a major fashion. And man, like Dio was saying, the confidence boost for all the members on this Goofy roster, I think is going to be really huge, because you know, then this was one of the things that I actually had thought about, hadn't really talked about as much, but you know, this team has been losing to basically the same roster, like over and over for literally 2 years. I mean, it's been, and I mean, yeah, you had like Vaxayan for Perennial 2021, things like that, but in general, these guys have been losing to the same players for practically 2 years. And so to finally kind of climb over that hump, is really cool to see, and it proves to me a little bit that Whispering Almond is like mortal, because I don't want to say they underperform, because I want to give all, you know, as much credit as possible to Team Goofy for their performance, but some of Whispering Almond kind of didn't have their best day, and I'm curious what effect that might have on future tournaments. What Goofy having such a great day, getting the momentum, getting the confidence boost, and Whispering Almond's players maybe not doing quite as well as you'd expect of them. So like, we've got tournaments coming up, you know, C3 and OWC. Do you think they carry that with them at all? Or is that something that these guys are gonna carry around? Is this big scale loss?
I mean, honestly, I don't think so. I think most of these guys play tons of tournaments. They have so much tournament experience, and I feel like, you know, one grand finals loss, especially after you win so many times, is not really going to get to you. You know, they play 4v4, they play 1v1, they play all kinds of tournaments. And so I imagine they're going to chalk it up. It was a close match. They'll shake it off, and they'll be good to go for the next tournament.
I will also say, with respect to OWC in particular, that is a very different sort of tournament from, you know, generally what you get in community tournaments. I think the relative strengths of the teams is a lot better defined in OWC than you see in tournaments like Corsace. And I think for OWC in particular, a lot of that is going to be more of the same part. The reason I mentioned OWC, the big elephant in the room for me during grand finals while I was casting it was Fancy Lad really just not having a good day, and Taquito not being able to show up until later on, and then still not being able to perform to the level that you usually see him at, likely due to lack of warm-up during the day of. So those two players in particular going into the OWC for USA, I think for them, it's going to be more of the same in OWC, same as last year, as in they are here to win. They are here to dominate as much as possible in pretty much every match they play during that tournament. And I don't think that is going to have too much of an impact. I think as you get into other community tournaments as well, the time gap between Corsace and the next couple big community tournaments, especially the next big team tournament, is really like perennial, right? Is there anything else for big team tournaments between OWC and perennial right now? I don't.
Teams, not really.
So.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So for me, the fact that this is a team tournament loss rather than 1v1, and it's an international loss rather than country based, and the next team tournament is basically perennial in spring, it means that they're going to have a lot of time to shake this off. They're going to have a lot of time to play some 1v1s or not and do other stuff if they want to. So I don't think it'll matter too much for them. And that's kind of the deal with a scene that we have right now, where everything is really spread out, a little bit disorganized, and you don't have kind of a set schedule to get back into. I think if this were a tournament like in the middle of summer right before Corsace, I would be concerned for how they would perform during Corsace, though, like if there were a very short amount of time going into the next huge tournament. But the fact that it is OWC, I think, weirdly enough, kind of mitigates some of that, because you're not under the same set of circumstances as you are in a tournament like Corsace.
I think, kind of, and I like being able to kind of give more of a player perspective here, I guess, from having played in some higher level tournaments. I think no matter how well you do in tournaments across the board, no matter how many tournaments you win over and over again, I don't think it's never, I want to make sure I'm not going to say this, I don't think it's never not going to get to you to take a loss in a grand finals match. I think while it may not have the same impact on your overall experience of the tournament and the game and a lot of different aspects, because these players participate in so many different competitions across the year, it's almost diluting it a little bit more, where it's, I've won 15 tournaments and I've gotten second place in 3 or something like that. There's a bunch of tournaments that you have experience in, and when you play this many, it feels different, even though you're kind of experiencing the same thing. So taking the loss in this, it's like, damn, we got second place, we didn't perform, the best, or I didn't FC that map I knew I could, or we practiced and it didn't work out for us, the other team played better than us, and, there's not really much you can do about that past a certain point. So, I think you do make a good point. OWC is a good distraction from the kind of everyday life, community team tournament, large scale tournament like Perennial and Corsace, where you have these kind of closer styled matches. You really expect high performances from a lot of the top 4 to 5 teams, versus kind of the World Cups, where rosters change bit by bit every year, but you're really kind of expecting a similar placement from a lot of these teams. So, everyone kind of expects the same top 6 teams, maybe in mixed order every year. Maybe the top 8 or 10 start to mix in a little bit, but the teams that are good really do shine. And I think luckily for a lot of the players on Whispering Almond, they are on a lot of those top performing teams. You've got US, you've got Poland, you've got Romania, UK, to give some examples, obviously, but there's a lot to move on forward from after this.
Okay. Well, sure. I guess that does make sense. It's such a different experience going on from these, mixed team 4v4s to OWC, that I can definitely understand where you guys are coming from on that. But I guess at the end of the day, just impressive performance by Goofy, and and they deserve a lot of congrats for closing things out. Obviously the ridiculous TB from Kriller was super big highlight. Any last thoughts just on this year's Corsace before we move on to next tournament we want to discuss?
Gunga custom songs.
It's Krillin time.
It's Krillin time. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, cool. The custom songs were so cool, dude. That grand finals tiebreaker was sick.
Nice tiebreaker.
It was so, I remember because we were doing the prediction, and I was like, I just want one of the sets to go to a tiebreaker so we can see this map and listen to this song, because it's so epic. And then we got it, so it was super
We got
cool.
it bracket reset.
Yeah, we got bracket
really.
reset tiebreaker, optimal. Let's fucking go. Yeah, that was super cool to see. So Corsace over. we move on to just a brief discussion, because I know this was a tournament that had a little less hype around it, but we talked about Zudinator in the grand finals of Corsace Open, and she was, along with Takedo and Utami, all three of them, in fact, in the grand finals of NAT. We had Zudi versus Takedo in the losers final there, and then Zudi went on to face Utami in the grand final there. And like, I kind of want to talk about her performance a little bit more, because, you know, she beat up on Takedo in the first set. That just kind of went, but looked really, really good, and then has looked really good. And I think that's like a player that I've been maybe most impressed by improvement-wise over the last 2 years, is Zudi getting to, like, what, grand finals in Corsace Close, getting to grand finals in NAT, winning in Corsace Open, like, and like becoming a great 1v1 player, and only losing to Tommy in NA. So I don't know how much of those matches you guys may have watched, but anything that was kind of as impressive to you on that grand finals week in a 1v1 setting?
I'll start and give a kind of general overview, because I think maybe some context for this grand finals is really important. Zudi is like the ultimate hopium player for snails like myself in tournament, right? Everybody points to Badu as like the ultimate snail tournament player. I actually think it's Zudinator, because she's Giga Snail and still like almost wins 1v1 tournaments, which is crazy. She did not have an easy road to grand finals. It was 5-3 against the Pro 365, 5-3 against Digital Hypno, 6-3 against Boshiman, and then she lost in semifinals to Takedo on tiebreaker before having to win against Mega MK 7-3, then Boshiman again 7-2, and then win against Takedo, facing him for the second time in losers grand finals 7-3 before finally getting to actual grand finals against Utami. So like, there were 0 clean matches for her. There was not a single match that she swept. There were no 6-1s or 7-1s. It was all like actually hard fought wins. And I think a lot of that is just because she basically auto loses a lot of speed picks against most other players, right? But she makes up for that in basically all of her matches with really, really disgusting aim consistency, super good hidden play, super good hard rock play, actually. Despite being a hidden main, she's a very, very good hard rock player in tournament, and has had really, really solid runs into late stages of, particularly, like you mentioned, Corsace Closed and NAT, abusing hard rock aim, no mod aim, hidden aim, and to some extent alt maps in various mod categories as well, which makes her matches a little bit predictable, but also fun to watch, because you know you're just going to get ridiculously good scores on a lot of those maps regardless of who she's playing against.
Yeah, and I kind of want to talk about the other side of the grand finals as well. Tommy's road to grand finals wasn't easy either. I mean, round of 32 went to tiebreaker. Round of 16 won 6-4 against Exarch. Quarters and semis won both of those in tiebreaker as well, before finally losing to Zudi in tiebreaker. And then, of course, coming back to win the tournament. But Utami has...
Wait. I think you're on the wrong bracket, sir. I'm pretty sure you are on the wrong bracket.
Yeah. I was like, wait a minute. I
think
this is maybe not right.
I think that is maybe 202021.
That was maybe last year.
That was maybe last year?
All right,
Utami,
take it away.
Utami actually had like the easiest road
Yeah.
in this year.
like
no offense to Utami.
So I was gonna discuss the last year kind of, because obviously if you did keep kind of tabs on North America tournament last year to this year, grand finals was the same 2 players. It was Utami versus Zudinator. If we're looking at the bracket this year, Utami led up a total of 0 points this year. Not counting the forfeit win he had against Decatan. There was not a single point let up, even against Takedo, who I think was unfortunately a little bit sick on finals weekend, but still, nonetheless, an absolutely dominant performance. Kind of, as usual from Utami, we kind of come to expect this kind of thing from him now, where he comes into this tournament, he is one of the best North American players in team tournaments, in solo tournaments globally, and when you put him against a bunch of other players from the same region, it really shows a little bit more than on the global scale you'd normally get to see, where there are so many other players who are kind of equally as dominant as Utami, but in their respective areas. When you get regional format, it just kind of concentrates it down into this singular area where he looks so much stronger. Last year, this grand finals match between Utami and Zudinator was pretty much the same as what we saw this year. It was a 7-5 win for Utami this year. No bracket reset to be had. And last year, of course, Utami, coming from the losers bracket, did need to bracket reset. Zudinator was able to win pretty handedly 7-1 and then 7-3. Zudi just barely winning in that winners finals. So a little bit of a flip this year. Utami kind of not making the same mistakes that he did from the previous iteration, a little bit stronger through the entire tournament. Of course, Zudinator losing to Takedo before that finals weekend. She had to fight her way through the losers bracket, put up a very valiant effort against a extremely strong Utami, and we kind of get our winners top 3 this year.
Yeah, I feel like it almost seems the almost predictable. The NA only tournament without like Fancy Lad playing, without Eri really ever having been a huge 1v1 player. Obviously, Vaxei, Idki were great at 1v1s and are both kind of departed the tournament scene, and Osu in general in Vaxei's case. So it almost feels like it's just kind of crystallized, like everything's just going to be Utami, Zudinator, and Takedo for the time being. Like, I don't know who's going to beat those 3. I really don't, until somebody else shows up and just becomes a god at 1v1 tournaments in North America. Like, can Ryuke become a 1v1 player? Because his skill cap is ridiculous, but he doesn't play 1v1, so it's irrelevant.
Exarch will enter the time chamber. He will enter the gravity chamber and become that much better.
Now that Bashiman made OWC, he will dominate the North America scene.
I'm actually waiting for Araxi to become the 1v1 North American god. I'm ready for Araxi dominance.
Dio shilling Florida players.
I'm hard shilling the Florida players. You are goddamn right, Joe. I'm ready.
Nah, but I am. I mean, I will say I am excited to see, like, with the new players getting on OWC this year, and with some of the newer players showing out in USC this year, like what we see in the next 10-12 months until the next late round of NAT rolls around, because I do think there's going to be some players who can show up and start to do damage, but they kind of just haven't proven it yet. They don't have the skill cap quite as of yet, I guess. But yeah, I feel kind of bad because NAT, it feels like with so many players having departed, has kind of lost a little bit of its luster, I guess you could say. A few years ago, it felt a little bit of a bigger tournament than it is now, which is a shame, because I think 1v1s are really exciting and really hype when you get, great signups and great matches. So hopefully, if we do see those players taking a step up, it can kind of regain its former glory as like this, a big competitive 1v1 tournament.
Bit sad that that's the way it's gone too, because I remember in 2020 when I started staffing for it, when I was doing map pools for it, it was like really, really interesting because we had Digital Hypno get into winners finals in 2020. It was so exciting because it was like, what is happening right now? This is not the way you expect the tournament to go, and it does feel a little bit predetermined before the tournament starts. A bit in the way that in 2021 4v4s felt a bit predetermined, just looking at the signups, right? I think it's been less so this year. We had a close we had bracket reset in Perennial and Corsace this year, so I think team tournaments are a lot more competitive this year than they were last. But it's for NAT, unfortunately, it feels like they're entering the slump zone of a few very, very dominant North American players.
Yeah, I do think we have seen a little bit more of a spread of kind of top players. I mean, if you look a couple, 2-3 years back, kind of the top of the leaderboard was just dominated by tons of good North American players that could all compete in these kind of NAT tournaments. But now when you look at top players, you've got Utami, Zudi, and Takeda, who are obviously very strong, but then you've got players like Whitecat, Emrek, Griller, Badu, who are all obviously not North American. And so a little bit less competition just in North America here.
Who's going to be the next great Mexican player? I feel like their legacy has fallen off really hard. I remember back in like 2017, 2018, like you'd see like Hebel and Wolfie and Riot doing well, and now it's just kind of fallen off, which is a shame because they have kind of a tradition of some decent tournament players that have just kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
It's got to be unexpected, right? He's like the first person that comes to mind as really, really good from Mexico in particular.
Puerto Rico?
Unexpected is from Puerto Rico, yeah.
Puerto Rico?
Rolling!
Yeah. I mean, he could see, obviously he still can play in NAT.
Yeah.
He can,
but he's from Puerto Rico. That's why he was
I gotta
allowed
look
to
at the
play.
Mexican
That's why he was
rankings.
allowed to play in USC last year, because Puerto Rico is like a territory of the United States.
Yeah. Okay, never mind.
He is really
there's,
good though.
He is really good. There's like nobody. It's like Saint SFT is the only one, but I think he's still a ways off from being top tournament player level. That's for sure.
I think
Riot
Riot just needs to play more.
Right, I know.
That's also a thing, but I don't think Riot cares enough about the game to become tournament god again.
When are we getting the Guatemala pop off? That's what I want to know.
Are there any Central American players? I guess there's Hammy, right? He's he's from what, Panama? Yeah, so there you go.
Panama.
It's a short list though.
It's a very short list.
Yeah, unfortunately, but hopefully, I mean, just bring us back to the glory days. Bring us back to like freaking Toy and Idke and I don't even know who in NAT, like late rounds. I miss them. But so speaking of NAT, of course, we can stay in USA here for a few minutes and go on to talk about the other big tournament that ended this past weekend, or I like to think of it as a big tournament. Maybe I'm a little biased there. But that was
No.
yeah, I am simply the host. But yeah, USC of course came and won once again. We had a big delay before the grand finals, which allowed the timing to line up a little better here. And I mean, USC was the story of, I guess, like kind of 4 big storylines, right? You had Washington being finally like ascending, getting top 3. They bring in Monko, and all of a sudden, all of their problems are solved because they have a skill cap player. Then you had Iowa.
Faker though. Can't forget.
Yeah, it also Faker 3. Yep. Jacob 3 played really well. You had Iowa surprising a lot of people, of course, with big upset early on. You had Florida, who in 2021 became the first non-California team to win a USC. And then, of course, the elephant in the room, the Filipino elephant in the room is Utami, who I guess just can't do anything wrong. I don't know, like, what, out of those things, to you guys, what would you say was the biggest and why of the big topics? Or, throw something else in if you've got something else in mind.
Well, there were definitely, this was such an exciting tournament. I mean, there were so many upsets, like you said, so many narratives. There was Iowa putting up a good performance, Massachusetts doing amazing, Washington beating SoCal 6-1 in the quarterfinals was such a great match. But sadly, the more things change, the more things stay the same. And it was just kind of that Florida SoCal matchup once again in grand finals. And I think kind of the highlight of this tournament, obviously, was Utami. We talked about Utami in NAT a bunch already, but I cannot understate how much of a beast Utami was throughout this entire tournament. Was hard carrying SoCal. I mean, we did see lots of good supporting combos from players like Lego Tommy, Matthew.
Lego Tommy.
Sorry, Lego
Tommy.
Not the first time I've done that. Probably won't be the last. But head stack as well. But ultimately, every single match, when everybody was broken, Utami was just there with a massive score, putting up ridiculous performances, consistent 1v2s. And it did feel like this was just the Utami show all tournament long.
Yeah, I can't really disagree with that. For me, I'm a little biased, right? I'm from Florida, so for me, biggest thing was watching my boy Araxi finally pop off on United States Cup stage, right? That was pretty cool. Florida just unfortunately and not close enough to winning grand finals. I know we talked a little bit like internally about how the map pool maybe didn't favor them a little bit during grand finals with the absence of some of the like raw aim stuff that Florida's actually very good at. But ultimately, the fact that this map pool was harder than in previous years in USC Grand Finals in 2021 and 2020, and the fact that Utami is just indisputably the best tournament player in North America made it really hard for Florida to kind of stage a comeback later stages. And it was really, really interesting to watch the losers grand finals also, because you have not only in grand finals do you have South California going 7-5 at first and then just really turning it on and going 7-3, but you have the 7-0 in losers grand finals earlier in the weekend to show like, yeah, there is and 7-1 from Florida in winners finals over Washington as well. So the difference between top 2 and top 3 in that tournament was just absurd. It was an absurdly big difference this year between Florida, SoCal, and everyone else.
Yeah, I think, kind of having the experience of playing in this tournament year after year and seeing all these teams change and the difference between the bracket this year was pretty much exactly as you said. There was Florida and SoCal in that grand finals, and, they were duking it out, and I really don't think there was any team that was close to them in terms of being able to make that, kind of top 2 stage. There was a lot of competition in United States Cup this year, more so than we've seen in a pretty decent amount of time, at least in previous years. And, you kind of look at the top teams in United States Cup this year, and there was, again, obviously the top 2 teams, Florida, SoCal, the 2 best by a pretty decent margin. You look at everyone else from the bracket who came up just short. So obviously you have Washington taking that loss in losers finals to SoCal. You had New York losing to SoCal as well. And then you had teams like Massachusetts and NorCal for your top 6 teams, where you had strong teams that were able to push their way through the rest of this tournament. You hit that semifinals finals weekend, and it's almost this like separator wall that you have to jump over. American Ninja Warrior, you have the 2 warped walls. You've got the normal one, right? You've got the normal one, and then you've got the big 16, 20 foot warped wall you have to run up, and there's the 6th through 4th place teams, 3rd place teams that can maybe get through the first one. You've got Florida, SoCal are the only 2 that can get through kind of that top high barrier. So while there was competition, I really don't think there was that much competition for that winner's spot this year. I think a lot of people probably could have predicted at the beginning it was going to either be Florida or SoCal. Very similar rosters to last year. SoCal a little bit stronger in terms of team performance overall. Florida making a few changes with a lot of similar staple players in here, a lot of strong returnees, and bringing on new players. So USC changes every single year, and it's unpredictable every single year. You never know what's going to happen. We talked about Iowa every single week that they were in the tournament nonstop because of how crazy that was. And especially Washington as well, making massive improvements. I guess I have to give the most props to them this year. That was an absolutely insane run from them from previous years. I don't know if Washington's made it through top 6 in ever before this year. And pushing to top 3 for the first time was absolutely incredible for them.
Yeah, I feel like this year, USC just kind of felt like everyone beats everyone, and in the end we have a California team win. Like, it just kind of felt, sooner or later it's just going to come down to this.
And taxes in South California.
Bro, I tell you,
team kill in semifinals weekend.
The team kill in semifinals. We had NorCal versus SoCal in that losers bracket match, and it went 7-5. Like, that was close.
Yeah.
I think this year highlighted something that's kind of interesting for me in the way that USC works. And it's something that we kind of talked about back during the actual matches. And that's the way that there are kind of 2 types of teams in USC, where there are the teams that are an actual team. They're a holistic, like, top to bottom, high skill floor, where everybody contributes something to the team. And then there's the, like, solo carry teams. And it actually ended up with a solo carry team winning, which is really interesting to me because Utami, obviously being, as we've said, the best player arguably in the in tournaments in the world right now, but in the very least he's very clearly the best in North America, and a team that has good players. I don't want to talk down on them, but nobody at his level. And you have like Colorado, right, which is Fancy Lad, and then kind of whoever else is playing for them. But then on the other side, you have like Washington, which finally got Monko, but still on the average, they don't have like an Utami, they don't have a Taquito, they don't have a Fancy Lad. Florida has a somewhat lesser active in tournaments, Digital Hypno, Exarch, who has been a little, I think, down in terms of motivation. Massachusetts that was missing, I think, kind of some of their strong players. So it's very interesting to me the way that USC works. And this also was played into, I think, with like the map pools this year, right? Where the actual pool itself was different. The slots were kind of thrown out in favor of overall skill representation. And the star rating and difficulty just got ratcheted like way up. And it made it so that if a team with one of those carry players made it to the grand finals, they could win. And that's exactly what Utami did. And I think that was really interesting to see. And I'm kind of curious what people think about kind of those two types of team compositions and this tournament and how that affects the way it played out.
I mean, to your point, we did see those kind of two opposing sides in grand finals, right? We saw SoCal having that one carry player in Utami. And then on the other side, of course, you do have Florida, who does have that more holistic team where it feels like any of those players can put up good scores and they're not relying on any one player. But I do actually kind of want to talk a little bit about the pick ban. I mean, Florida losing 7-2 in that second match did make it feel a lot more one-sided overall than it was, and a lot more one-sided than it really should have been. I feel like the first match 7-5 was incredibly close. We saw a couple break points for Florida, but a lot of those points were very close. We're within 60-70k, and so potentially if one more of those points goes over, all of a sudden we're getting a tiebreaker and Florida can win it. But in the second match, I didn't really feel great about a lot of Florida's picks. It felt like they picked a lot of maps that SoCal had won previously. It was 2-2, I believe, at the start of the match, and then SoCal gets a couple break points, and it feels like Florida kind of just collapsed after that. They just lost point after point after point. And that match was so much more one-sided than it felt like it should have been when you compare those two teams.
USC is also 3v3 and not 4v4, so I think it makes it a lot easier for solo carries to happen, right? You only have to carry 2 other people instead of having to carry 3 other people, so like it's just not as hard to solo carry. But at the same time, I think it's a couple of things. It's the team size, it's the map pools and the way they were structured being different from usual and maybe being a bit worse for Florida, and it's the fact that the map pools were harder overall, right? To draw a comparison internationally, it's like if OWC featured 9-star aim pools. Like, who's winning that tournament? Probably Germany, because they can get to grand finals and then just out-aim everybody on the US by putting White Cat in on every map, right? Like, that's kind of the thing that happened this year for SoCal, is that the tournament got really weird map pools in the grand finals, and Utami's really good at literally everything, so he just got to outperform everyone by no small amount. And he only had to carry 2 people instead of 3 while doing it, so it just made it that much easier. Which is to say, not super easy, but given that
doable.
The first round was 7-5, but doable, right? Because I think if you get a slightly easier map pool, if you get a more standard map pool, that probably ends up with a Florida win. But Tommy able to hard carry.
Yeah, I think a lot of the top end scaling in United States Cup this year came very late in the tournament. I think all the way through semifinals and even finals, kind of depending if you're a higher level tournament player or not, were fairly standard pools at least what you should be used to for an open rank country-based tournament. I think, with the United States being a more competitive country, people are used to slightly harder regional pools here. Tournaments like North America tournament, kind of the same thing. A lot of the strong Canadian, US players are used to these top level, pools, high mid 7 stars. In United States Cup, it's always been a little bit less common to see stuff like that, because I think Dada has kept kind of a very similar scaling strategy in previous years, and I think towards the end he's been trying a few new things this year and took some variable routes with the pools in terms of slots that were picked and difficulties towards the later stages. And it was kind of unfortunate for Florida that South California had a player like Utami who is just able to play everything. There's not a lot of players who are able to have that kind of versatility and that consistency across the board at this level, that there wasn't really much Florida was going to be able to do, especially after losing that first match. Florida is a team that very much thrives on their kind of mental status in a match. They don't really have somebody who is super good at rallying them back together from a very low point, although they have the skill to get themselves out of that point. When you have Utami who continues to perform, it makes it hard for your skill to kind of get you out of that rut. So with SoCal's performance overall, a lot of good performances backing up Utami as well, not up to his level but matching the performances from Florida players like Matthew, who had some absolutely amazing performances on maps as well across some picks. And SoCal just kind of, again, I said perfect storm earlier, and it wasn't the perfect storm for them this year, but it was good enough to give them the little 2 map edge they needed in that first set in grand finals. And then kind of Florida realizing what was going to happen just let it slip away a little too much, and SoCal brings it back home again.
Another third win now. Who needs Hurricane Ian when you've got Hurricane Utami? Perfect storm. Also,
too close to home, man. Too close to home.
I know. I'm kind of curious to see what happens like next year. Rectagon will be back for Virginia, who obviously fell off pretty hard this year, and Ohio. I still don't know what happened to Ohio, and I don't even want to try to figure out what happened to Ohio. But hopefully, hopefully we get another really compelling competitive tournament like this year again, because I think this was one of the more exciting USCs in terms of really close matchups and really cool upsets. But like I said, in the end, everybody beats everybody and SoCal wins. Hooray! It's just what happens. But I mean, it was a good tournament regardless, I think. So with that, that's the couple big tournaments that just ended. And so now I want to take a few minutes to talk about a big tournament that is just now starting, which is going to be the Circle Circuit Championship. And with that being the brainchild and the baby of Dio, we're going to let Dio discuss that and kind of lead us into a brief talk on C3.
Sure. So a couple of things that are important when discussing C3 Circle Circuit Championships. First, what is Circle Circuit? Because that's new this year. It's basically a conglomeration of a bunch of different community tournaments all working together to jointly rank the top tournament players of the year. At the start of the year, we decided on the point values that would be assigned to different tournaments, and depending on players' placements within the top 16 of each of those tournaments, they'd be given a certain amount of points for how well they did. You can see Malashevsky and Arnold pretty well ahead of the crowd. Malashevsky winning 3 out of 5 Circle Circuit tournaments this year. And Arnold winning the tournament, which was weighted the highest, which was actually Yaz's Summer Cup. That's where the majority of his points come from there. And then you've kind of got Reed, Cat, Karcher, and the rest of the crowd down in the bottom 4 in terms of points, at least. The rest of the crowd still being extremely good tournament players, because those are 8 players out of, let me scroll down, I'm still scrolling, 178
Oh my gosh.
In here. So
that's pretty cool.
Oh no, sorry,
194
players who actually have Circle Circuit points as of right now. So yeah, quite a lot of players who ended up getting points at all during the run of Circle Circuit this year, which is really cool. But yeah, these are the 8 that ended up qualifying in. The qualifying process was quite literally down to Corsace Grand Finals. Zudi just barely getting in off the back of quite literally winning Corsace. Otherwise, Ciccone would have been the 8th player. Emmerich Whitecat right below Ciccone as well. So a top 10, top 12, pretty competitive among a lot of players. What we're doing now, and the reason why we're talking about it here, is we want to decide among these top 8 who is the best tournament player of 2022. So we currently have a round robin going. It's a single round robin, basically one giant group where everybody here plays against each other once. 28 matches over the course of 2 weeks, 7 matches per player. I've actually already started. There's been a couple of matches already that have been played. Karcher versus Zudinator and Arnold versus Zudinator. So yeah, we're going to have a full round robin, and then the top 4 will play against each other in a single elim bracket where every match is best of 13, and we'll get a semifinals, a third place decider, and a finals in 2 weeks, 2 weekends from now. This weekend and next will be entirely round robin.
I think this should be super exciting. It's like kind of along the lines of like a Corsace Closed, where it's just incredibly competitive because you have all these players who are so good in really high star rating pools and really competitive tournaments. So
yeah, the round robin pool is already 8 stars, by the way.
Yeah, I'm really hyped to see, just kind of how this goes, because these are all insane players, and I think the matchups between them, ignoring Arnold, like, questionable in terms of match attendance, I suppose.
You could say that.
You say that he accidentally no-showed his match versus Zudi already.
Yeah.
The second match of the tournament. So, off to a good start there.
Yeah.
Off to a good start there.
But I mean, it's a bit of a shame that we didn't get like maybe Emrek, because the same thing would have just happened with him. So like flip a coin, who's going to show up to a match?
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting. There's a couple of people. Okay, let's get some predictions on like who's getting into top 4. I'll give mine right now, and then we can kind of discuss, because I think that's the important part of this. And it's, again, everybody plays everybody. If 2 players are tied for wins, whoever won head-to-head between them is the one that advances. So keep that in mind if you are thinking, okay, there are probably going to be some ties. I'm looking at Malashevsky Utami, who are going to advance 100% of the time. I don't think there's any question there. And then from there, I'm looking at probably Karcher and Zudi, actually. I'm going to go not Arnold. I'm going to go Zudi advancing over Arnold instead, because Arnold has accidentally forfeited his match versus Zudinator to start the tournament, and I no longer have faith.
Man.
That is going to be my top 4. In order, Malashevsky, Utami, Karcher, Zudi is my top 4.
Well, I'll go ahead and say I just agree with that. Like when you said predictions, I was like, yeah, it's like the corners there, the 1, 4, 5, and 8. I just think there are too many ways that like Badu, for instance, can be abused by most of these players. I'm just kind of not sold on Reedcat. I think Akolabed kind of snuck in just because of, was it Nyx?
Yeah.
He kind of
3 forfeits.
And Arnold also kind of snuck in because of YSC, which was like the most shocking outcome of him getting to where he did in that tournament. And I think it's just super, super, to me, on paper, it looks super obvious that it would be Ristel, Utami, Karcher, Zudi.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I hate to do it, but I have to put the same 4. It's like you mentioned. It feels like Akolabed and Arnold both got in off the back of a single tournament that kind of didn't necessarily go as you would expect. And just getting so many points from that, when you look at their other tournaments that they've played, they actually haven't gotten very many points from those at all. I mean, especially with Arnold no-showing the first match, I would be a little bit more worried for them, and it just feels like a no-brainer to go with those 4.
Well, I guess I have to be the one to mix it up.
You do.
Then I guess. All right. Well, All right. I'm definitely gonna stick with at least 3 of the 4. I think Melishevsky Utami is no-brainer half of this top 4. I don't think it's a question in anyone's minds. I think of the other players left, I think Zudinator has been the highest performing of kind of that bottom end of this top 8 here based on number of points. I think she has her strong points that aren't necessarily shown quite as much in 1v1 tournaments as they are team tournaments, so she has less opportunities to kind of take extra points. I think I'm going to have to give the 4th spot to Badu, honestly, and I will tell you why. Badu, while not a inherently tapping favored player, is very good mechanically. He has very good base mechanics, tapping and aim, and this inert ability to play high star maps as if they inert
inert ability of being like it's inactive. Let's go.
It is inactive. That's doomed for him. Yeah, actually, no. This innate ability to play these higher star maps as if they are nothing, and kind of, getting a chance to look at a lot of these circuit pools and see what's happening with them. Badu is going to have kind of a big opportunity on, I think, this tournament to really show where he is strongest, and that's his high-end skill cap. It's, again, those base mechanics that I think are not focused on enough a lot of the time because, people go, oh, he can't tap, or oh, he can't do this. He can play a lot of fast maps, and he can play basically every aim map known to man, and he's really good at mods, Hard Rock and Hidden, both of them. So you've kind of got this top-end skill that I think, while Karcher is a very skilled player and very good at the game and very consistent, doesn't quite have as much consistency at that higher star rating, where maybe Badu will have a little bit of an advantage. But, I think that's maybe me getting a chance to see Badu a little bit more in tournaments. Maybe he's played more often. I don't know. I don't know what it is about it. Something gives me hope.
I could actually see Badu getting in. I could see him getting in, because this pool is not a speed pool. This is like Nomad 1 was pooled by Shiv. It is like Centimillennial Mendokusai 200 BPM edit, right? Like this is the Badu Nomad 1 of Badu Nomad 1s. You have the tech map, which is not at all streams. It is 100 BPM slider aim basically all the way through. You have the Hard Rock pool is a tech cut streams CS 6.8 map, and Louder Machine Xerius Extra for Hard Rock 3, which is the single most Badu Hard Rock pick I have ever seen in my life. And then DT1 has a single 9-note burst, and that is it in the entire map. And other than that, it's all 270 awkward aim. So I can see him winning a lot of those picks, and I think other people are going to be forced into the Nomad 2, Nomad 5, Hidden 3, Double Time 2, Double Time 3, which, to be fair, that's 5 maps. He gets 1 ban, so if they win all 4 of those, they can tiebreaker pretty easily, and then he probably loses, because that map's a stream map. But if they drop any of those points at all, which I think the most likely one would probably be Hidden 3 to drop. So I think the question of whether Badu advances is, can he win Hidden 3? If he can beat people on Hidden 3,
it just all hinges on one map.
I actually think it does. I actually think it hinges on one map, because look at the maps where he's going to get abused. It's My Heart Will Go On. It's Nomad 5 category 250 BPM speed. It's Amanita, because the other 2 hidden maps are Badu maps. None of the Hard Rock maps are really tapping intensive at all.
Wings of Freedom, by the way.
And then Wings of Freedom and Higurashi Moratorium DT3. So
he's gone.
Those are 5 maps where you expect him to lose. If he can win one of them and ban out another, then that's only 3 maps, and he can likely end up closing out the matches. So I think it quite literally all hinges on his ability to play Hidden 3. See how it goes.
Wish him the best of luck on Hidden 3.
All right, good luck, Badu. Have fun.
Good luck on Hidden 3, man. Well, that about sums it up.
I think so.
for C3 at least, if you want to bring us on to a next topic, because I know we got one more.
Yeah, so that is all the stuff that's going on right now, and so I think we are going to be saying goodbye for the next for the rest of the show to Mr. iFlame. So first of all, I want to say thank you for being here and participating and being a contributor to the discussions today. And we're going to go on to talk about, for just a few minutes, Corsace Open 2023, because there are a lot of changes, and just wanted to kind of speak to those and see what people's opinions are a little bit on some of the changes that are being made to Corsace Open. I think we have... Oh, maybe we don't have a stream for this. Well, he might be chilling here. We'll see.
There it is.
We have this kind of issue that people have been talking about, where tournaments last a really long time and matches overlap a lot because there's so many of them in a given week, and pools are all the same, and things like that. So the idea here with 2023 is to try to alleviate some of those issues that we've seen. So I took inspiration, and I will admit this, very much from League of Legends World Championship, of all places to take inspiration from. You can see on the screen kind of the format, but it starts earlier than that. So it's kind of being changed to where qualifiers are being rolled into the registration phase. So teams can just kind of play qualifiers whenever works for them, from like when they sign up until qualifier stage period time ends. So this, kind of shortens things. You don't have to worry about a whole qualifiers week. It's just qualifiers will be done when signups are done. And then with the qualifier results, you go into a very different sort of bracket structure. So you can see on the screen here, stage 1 features teams 9 through 32. I'm making sure I'm getting 9 through 24. Excuse me, 9 through 24. From the qualifiers, the top 8 get to go on to the bracket stage automatically. So they skip out on some time. They have fewer matches to have to worry about. They have fewer matches against lower skill teams to have to play. And you go back to a round robin phase. So first off, round robin stage. We haven't seen one of those in Corsace for a while. We are seeing it as kind of something that I almost feel like people want to go back to, because it shortens things up, and it creates kind of a couple more early matches for people to get to play. So first off, round robin, best of 9, everybody in the group plays everybody in 4 groups. Thoughts on round robin, because I know these are kind of a divisive topic.
I think, I guess I'll start. I think and I kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier, I think like round robin group stage was something that, while is a more time consuming thing for some staff, like the referees and, kind of facilitating matches, I think it is a slightly more accurate way of determining seedings or team placements or team skill overall than I think just going straight into qualifiers and having everyone play the exact same set of maps individually. It doesn't really give you kind of that one-to-one matchup experience. You're not really testing your skill against other teams. You're really just looking at your own individual performance on a given day, which can fluctuate for a lot of teams. There are some players that are better at performing consistently over multiple matches, and some who, might do better with practice, some, in different scenarios, the time you're playing at, being able to schedule a match around a certain time or a qualifier somewhere. So, I think being able to seed teams outside of that top 8 based on their performance against other teams, it keeps the same kind of matchup like integrity and kind of skill checks between the teams that you'd be getting from a larger bracket stage, while kind of eliminating the multiple schedules and weekends and having to space matches out because they're played in chronological order. So it's pretty much the most effective way of shortening the amount of time that this kind of earlier bracket stage is going to take, without having to compromise the placements of teams and, kind of where they would end up in the end. So I'm in favor of it.
Yeah. One other thing, then, this was a big reason why this format was chosen and this number of teams was chosen, more importantly, is that when you have a smaller amount of groups like this, there are only 4 groups, right? There's not actually that many teams playing. In fact, the tournament is getting fewer teams next year than this year. We're going down from 32 to 24. You get a closer level of competition during the early stages of the tournament. In particular, the top 8 aren't even playing, so you don't get your usual shit stomps that you get in the round of 32, to put it bluntly. And instead, you get like 9 versus 24 as the largest difference in seeding between these teams, right? So even among your first versus last seeds in a group, you're still not going to have that much variation in overall skill level, which is going to make a lot more matches a lot more interesting early on, and is going to make it a lot closer for most of these teams. So you don't have some teams who will want to just FF because they know they're going to lose regardless, and you don't have some teams who don't want to practice because they know they're going to win regardless, and you don't have viewers who are sitting there watching seed 1 5-0 blast out seed number 32 being like, okay, when do we actually get to watch the tournament, guys? When do we actually get to watch the tournament? Well, now you get to watch it from week 1. So I think it's going to be a lot better for all 3 parties involved there.
Yeah, and I think the way I kind of described this when setting it up was that there's sort of, in this format, there's 3 tiers of teams and kind of a 4th as well. So you have the 1 through 8 seed that go automatically into the bracket. That's like the tier 1 teams. They're going to beat pretty much everybody else, and they're going to beat up on each other. And then you have the tier 2, which is going to be kind of like the teams that finish top 4 in the groups, so the teams that win the groups, the top 4 from the groups, they get to go on to the bracket stage right from there, and they will beat up on each other, but they'll probably, they'll lose to the teams above them, and they will beat the teams below them pretty reliably. And then once you get through the group stage, you get into this runoff bracket, which I think is something, I don't know that this has ever been done in an OSU tournament before, and I think it's kind of a unique idea, where you have this tier 3 of teams, which are the 2nd and 3rd place teams in the groups. They are going to play each other in a mini bracket to determine the last 4 teams in the final bracket stage. So again, it's trying to accurately represent them against each other so you can seed them properly, and while still eliminating a couple of teams to get down to that smaller bracket size. Because with this format, you have a round robin that's 1 week, and then you have the runoff bracket that's 1 week. So you've already condensed the first several weeks of the tournament down a bit, and that's the whole goal of this. And so I think I'm super excited actually about this particular portion where you have this small single elimination bracket, because I think that's going to be something really unique, and I think it's going to result in some really competitive matches because it's against teams that are all at a super similar skill level.
One other thing that I wanted to mention about this format is I think other tournament hosts are already starting to try to mimic this. I know, for example, at least version Delta, an experimental tournament that Nick is hosting, is going to be trying to mimic this coming up shortly. So the fact that this is announced in advance is lending itself to experimentation from the community. So even if there are some slight changes to this, you get a lot of time to look at how other people run this sort of format. And to that end, I was pulled in to talk about this format with a lot of the other Corsace staff. I had already come up with something very similar that I wanted to do for Perennial anyway. So I think a lot of people are on the same page. Condensing this format down is really nice. And then to talk about the mini bracket in particular, getting to accurately seed people is important, but also making it so that, if there is a large difference between seed 1 and seed 2, or seed 2 and seed 3, there is still a chance for those 3rd seeds in a group to get into the bracket stage. It makes it, I think, much less deterministic near the end of a group for certain teams who may still want to try their best near the end of that group to either get that 1st seed or get that 3rd seed if you are 4th seed, right? To guarantee yourself still a chance of playing in the bracket stage.
And then, so here's like just a little brief overview, and you can kind of see once you get through those first couple stages, we go into elimination stage. So round of 16 onward through finals, single elimination in that bracket. Again, shortening things up. This is basically taking the entire tournament from 7 weeks that you'd typically see from like a 32 team with qualifiers in a double elim down to 4 weeks. So we're taking 3 weeks off the length. And, you know, some of the other things to toss in that I just want to discuss really briefly before we run out of time. We're going to try to schedule like matches so that there are fewer schedule pain points for teams via like availability and rescheduled rules. Also, lowering the team size. We talked earlier about how we have kind of this slightly smaller top end skill like pool of players, and so we're going to a 6-player team instead of an 8-player team, still 4v4 with an additional manager role who, you know, handles kind of the logistics of things. And so I think, you know, all of this at the end of the day, that's trying to make for more strong teams. It's trying to make for a more level playing field, and it's trying to keep things competitive, fresh, and unique while also shortening the tournament down a little bit. So I think at the end of the day, just trying to solve a lot of these pain points all at once, but in a way that will still perform well and I think be enjoyable for both players and viewers. And I personally, I mean, yeah, it's kind of my baby a little bit because I helped develop a lot of the rule set here. I'm really excited to see how this goes, and I think hopefully you guys are too. I don't know how it'll play out, but I think it'll go well.
Well, I am going from this to watching League of Legends Worlds, so you can tell my take on the format.
Real.
I mean, hey, man. Look, I like the format. I also think, and this is something that we haven't talked about, but I'm pretty sure what we're doing week 3. Are we using the set format? Is that coming back for week 3 and 4 during the elimination stage? And if it is, I think it's coming back with the map pool format also during those rounds. Am I mistaken?
So it's coming back for week 3. Like, there actually will be a difference between the first and second weeks of the elimination stage. So like the first week is going to be the multi-pool setup with sets, and then the last week where it's the semifinals and then the finals and the 3rd and 4th place match, those are going to go back to being a more standard regular match format with one pool.
Interesting. Okay.
Very cool.
So it's like trying to be a little more unique and trying to introduce some new concepts. And I know the one kind of downside is not having double elim in those late rounds, but unless you want to add several more weeks back, unfortunately you can't have it both ways. That's kind of just how it is. But with the round robin, with the runoff bracket, like, it provides a lot of opportunities for teams to play matches in those first few weeks, and to establish themselves and to prove, you know, hey, we deserve to be here and we're capable of beating these teams, while also not extending out too long. So that's, and you know, I know this is going to be one where people will have to experience it, I think, before they really can have like great feedback. But obviously, you know, if you're the type of person that's uncertain, that's confused, that has questions, feel free to join the server and, you know, ask and give your feedback and give your thoughts, and we're here to discuss those things. But I do think that going forward, this is going to be a pretty cool way to really shake things up from a very established, very sterile, and maybe a little bit of a tired format that we've been seeing for the last couple of years.
I'm also very excited. I know this kind of flew under the radar with the format changes and everything, but I'm also very excited about the formal encouragement of the use of team managers from the side of Corsace, because I have been friends with someone called Xfire who does team management for a variety of teams, including various Russian teams. I won't go into too much depth on what he does, but there is a reason why Russian always outperform your expectations, and part of it is him. Having team managers do a bunch of stuff for your team and largely shape how the team is constructed can really bring some extra oomph to your overall performance. So I would highly encourage trying that out during the regular tournament season before Corsace comes around, because I think those who do are going to be set up very well to perform better than they usually do in this tournament.
Petition to call them strat callers.
Strat callers.
Immediately.
They're like OGLs. They're out of game leaders
They're
instead of in-game leaders. Yeah, it's something that we've seen and kind of talked about. You have already sometimes you'll have players who like put together the team and run things, but they're from the inside, so they're taking up a roster spot, and now they won't have to do that anymore. And it takes a little bit of the onus off of the players to do that sort of thing. Gomo, I think, is one that comes to mind, obviously, and Listia on Team The, I think, played that role, though did play some maps in the grand finals, so not like quite to the Gomo standard, but definitely up there. Gomo was the zero map specialist.
Yep.
But that about wraps it up. Gone through long enough, I think, here. I hope but I hope everybody enjoyed. I hope you guys got something out of the discussion on this tournament. Like I said, feel free to join the Corsace official Discord server if you want, to have any more questions, want to discuss any of the format changes with us, if there's anything you're confused about. And that's going to do it for this week. So thank you, Chillier. Thank you, Dio. Thank you to iFlame for being here today. We move from summer into fall, and as I said at the beginning, and that means that OWC is coming up. So next week is going to be an episode that you're not going to want to miss, because next week we are going to be doing our OWC predictions episode. That's going to probably be super long, but it'll be really in-depth. It'll be a lot of fun. People who are around for the prediction shows with Azer Bubbleman and then us three that are currently on screen in the past years know it's a good time. We talk about a lot of teams, and we talk about a lot of things that could happen in the World Cup. So that'll be coming up in the next week and a half or so. Stay tuned for that one. Until then, I've been this one guy. Thank you for watching Full Circle, Episode 2. We'll see you next time.